When I was younger, I definitely thought Pride was like the purge for gays. I'd always heard the phrase "be gay, do crime," and I was like, I guess they can just rob banks and stuff. Turns out they can't. Hey everyone, Kyle from Cosplays from Trash, and I have not done a How I Made video in quite some time. I have definitely been focusing on a few other things related to CFT and myself and also life. And I was looking back through like what kind of video I haven't made in a while, and then I realized two of my favorite costumes I have never really talked about. One being my first like real costume, I call it, and then the second costume is a costume that I was the first time I like really guest judge. I've done a lot of smaller events, but this is the first time where I was ever like one of the main cosplayers at an event. So this was like my COVID project where I kind of did it in 2021/2022, and then this one was done in 2024. Before I go any further, I want to thank everyone on Patreon for supporting me for all this time. I mean, I really do appreciate that from anyone, even the lowest level to the highest level, no matter how long. That definitely helps continue the channel. One huge thing that will definitely help CFT, like, share, and subscribing. It also feels good when the numbers go up on the subscriber. That one isn't the biggest metric, but that one just feels good. There's about 1 billion costumes I could have chosen for this, but those two seemed the most appropriate considering they were kind of firsts, and I somehow missed doing both of them. Minor plug about Patreon, and this costume will be discussed a little bit more, but Ryan joined me on a Trash After Dark photo shoot this last month of 2 Aaron Fishers. That's this month's. Sometimes I don't like giving hard deadlines because I am a very scatterbrained person, and hard deadlines are hard. It's kind of a Dragon Con plan towards the end of the video, but we'll talk about today's topic first. So I am terrible with pronouncing everything, so Brigitte from Overwatch, a game that I was mildly obsessed with for a while, and then I stopped playing because I appreciate voice chats in games, but the problem is I really hate dealing with toxic people. Like, it's just exhausting. When you have 5 9-year-olds screaming healer diff 10 seconds into the game, it's like, I want voice chat to be on so we can talk to each other, but I just can't do this, y'all. Her look is actually from the reveal trailer where she was not really in her armor yet. This is her garage look, and I really liked it because the shirt says, "I work out so I can eat." Looking back, this was actually a surprisingly pretty ambitious costume. If anyone is nervous about making a costume, just remember the first important rule. I guess there's other rules like have fun or whatever. It's a matter of breaking everything down and figuring out how you're going to do things. It's like life. You compartmentalize projects, and that's how you end up doing them and making them easier. So with the overalls, this is several pairs of clothing slash overall slash jeans slash other things in here because I ended up lining part of it. For the most part, she only wears one strap, and so I wanted to make sure that the inside, which was white, was showing. I'm a big fan of draping and kind of making a dummy pattern first, oftentimes. That's effectively what I did here. When you break down overalls, it's basically pants, then there's also some sort of front, and there's some sort of back, which can be an X or whatever, and then there are straps. The front and the back can be a variety of sizes, but typically it is strap, connection, bottoms. That was a lot of trial and error because I was not really a great seamster yet.
Seamster, sewer, and sewist, I just use those 3 interchangeably because they're all basically the same.
This is something I kind of similarly did for Aaron Fisher, which I did a couple years later, but the basic tenet of it is, can you figure out what all the smaller pieces are and then eventually connect them? Before I had a Cricut, I cut this out by hand and made my own stencil. Ended up using some sort of sponge paint. I shouldn't have used acrylic because definitely that has worn off with time, and while that ends up being a good look, maybe an oil-based paint or something, or just a different stain would have been better because it kind of looks a little weathered right now, but I can't really control the weathering with the acrylic based paint because it's, water soluble or water squishyable, water mess upable. Back before I'd ever made any sort of wrist gauntlets or anything like that, these are just made out of shirts, and I ended up reinforcing the insides. This is actually mostly a car tarp that was weathered and just kind of ripped apart because I didn't really have any elastic at this point before I started collecting a lot of things. So this is not held on in the best way. I'm a huge proponent of I don't care what the inside looks like as long as the outside looks okay. And this is a very good example of that, where on the outside, they do look like legitimate gauntlet slash wrist guards or whatever these are supposed to be for her. On the inside, they look absolutely garbage. I had never really made a prop before, and I didn't know exactly how to go about mapping it out. So I would say that the wrench is not necessarily accurate, but it is, with the stuff that I had and the limited tools that I had, I would say that it's relatively close and gets the point across. It doesn't function like an actual wrench, and it is pretty heavy, and I kind of hate carrying it around, but it does look okay. Again, this was like my first real cosplay that I did in 2021/2022. And so I wasn't worried a lot about visual accuracy. I was mostly worried about, like, is it good enough and all. The same thing can kind of be said for the tool belt. I didn't really know what I was doing here, and so this is like a notebook and a mouse pad and a few other things and a more super glue than I'd like to admit. It's not very functional, but it does kind of work for the purposes that I was trying to do. I talk a lot about what makes this costume good, and I definitely think that execution and effort are paramount to a cosplay success. Jumping forward a few years, I made a much more difficult costume in Drayden. This was for my guest spot at EvilCon in 2024. It was the year of the dragon, and since Drayden is a dragon type trainer, I thought, why not do Drayden? I need another word besides do, because I say do a lot, and I'm not like smashing all these cartoon characters. Drayden's costume follows a lot of the same patterns that Brigitte did. Both the pants and the shirt needed to be heavily tailored because I think they were both too large, and the pants had a lot of weird pleating. At the end, it kind of just looks like pants and shirt, but that's a good thing when things just kind of look like clothes. Working with trash, you definitely have some limitations, but I was actually really happy with how the suspenders came out, because typically suspenders are going to be elastic or some sort of stretchy material to hold things in place. Yes, some suspenders have like no give whatsoever, but for the most part, there is some sort of give in a lot of modern suspenders. You know, you want a little bit give when you move because we do not stay the same height throughout the entirety of contortion and moving around. Surprise, in case you ever notice that you go lower when you do this. This is one of those things that's a lot easier with a 3D printer. Some really small details are much easier just to print. I know that's kind of an easy way out, but definitely like the shoulder spikes, that is one of those like 27-gallon tubs or whatever. I found one that had a crack in it that was green, and so that's what the baseline of all of the green is on both the shoulders and the... I guess these are clips that are on his belt. They have some function, probably, but for me, they didn't. They were just there. And so between mouse pads and one of those big old tubs with lids, that was a lot of handwork that, I mean, it's a matter of precision cutting things out with some aviation snips or surgical shears. I use these for so much stuff because they cut through a lot of things really easily. It's a lot of cutting triangles and then mirroring things on each other because you want things to be parallel. I know this kind of looks like the Umbrella Corporation symbol from the Resident Evil games. I was about to say from the Raccoon City games. Just the hardest part about using trash when you're doing these things is making sure that things that are supposed to be even are actually even and parallel and flush and whatever other term you can use to mean some sort of symmetrical. I think most of it was hot glue on the inside, and then I used some clay foam on the outside to kind of make some of the ridges pop a little bit more. I'm not very precise when it comes to cutting things, and so making very accurate metallic pieces to go on top of this would have been more difficult than it already was. The cool part that I really appreciate was the beard that I made. So I'm not really the best with beards or just hair things in general like that, but the best way to make things like this is make a bunch of wefts out of yarn for hours and hours and hours. I made a bajillion wefts, but with the baseline layer on, and that was a kind of a weird shape that I had to do with his face because he has like these teeth things in his beard because Pokemon designs are ridiculous. They often incorporate things that just don't make sense. It's like, oh yeah, he would have a teeth job dragon beard. That's stupid. So I built this very weird frame out of cardboard that wrapped over my head. And I know since this was going to be hidden by the wig, there's a lot of small things that you end up like realizing when you start making things, not just out of trash, but making new things in general that you didn't necessarily think of before. There's going to be a lot of humidity coming out of your mouth. And so you want to make sure that it's not all just going onto one area and possibly getting wet or being damaged or growing mold or something like that. So I ended up making a mouth escape hole so that not only would my lips be able to move up and down and not on the inside of the cardboard beard itself, hence the putting it a little bit away from my mouth, but also that I could fully enunciate. Some of these things were definitely like you make part of it and then you realize, oh, there's kind of a mistake in engineering. It was a lot of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, more like 4 steps forward, 1 step back, because it's not like I had to redo this every time. Got to make sure that this is positioned correctly, and so sometimes there'd be small adjustments. It's very common to have to make minor adjustments towards the end of the process when things are fitting, and so I made a lot of the adjustments that fit my body better, but also like minor improvements like that at the same time. Hopefully they didn't sound like it was like a terrible process that I had to redo a billion times. Like it was actually a really great learning process, and I was very happy that for the most part I did everything correctly the first time. So while I really do like the buckles and straps and shoulder pointy things and the bolo tie, I think all that's great, and that really was made from some cool materials, but I definitely think that even when you make things out of like crappy materials like cardboard and yarn, you can make a pretty good mask, and as evidenced by this, It blended pretty seamlessly with the hair. I think it's really cool looking back at costumes that meant a lot to me, or that I really felt very Kyle in making, and realized that I haven't really changed, even though a lot of my methods have changed and I've gotten a lot better. There's still a lot of core principles that I kind of execute. Even back in the day when we're talking about chimeraing multiple pieces of fabric together and a pair of overalls and a pair of jeans and a shirt and all this other stuff to make this weird hybrid. Like, sure, I did it a mediocre way back then, but now I've refined that process a lot more, and I still do a lot of those similar things, but I'm just infinitely more efficient at it. They're very Kyle. And that just makes me a little happy. While I have a little bit of time, I thought I'd give a Dragon Con preview. For Dragon Con, I initially had these 3 ideas, and then it kind of turned into 6. And so I don't know entirely what I'm doing for Dragon Con, but this is the vague, and Aaron Fisher. Anyway, I'll be revamping that, plus 2 to 4 of these costumes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Why do they make it look so tasty? Popcorn buckets. We're all waterable in the hands of an angry god. That's stupid. Oh, by the way, I found this mug that has a squirrel on it. If you're 70% H2O, you're 30% wants to sleep. Shakira can't hurt me here. I thought Shakira was in jail. Tax evasion? I made fun of Melodic on Instagram, and like literally like 15 people unfollowed me because of that. And I'm like, okay. Like, stand by what I said. Also, the new Mega Dragonite is garbage. This is probably the worst Mega design. This is the worst Mega design that exists. Tubby the Lid Man. Tubby the Lid Man. My doctor says I'm not supposed to be drinking so much coffee because of my resting heart rate. Popcorn buckets. I haven't really talked about it very much, but this is our counselor, Consuela. She and Mile are on HR. Basically, their job is to keep Lyle in check. No, it's just, like, I also found this really cool seal. I'm not trying to poison myself, but there's so often times where something will just look very delicious, and don't eat that, Kyle, don't eat that, and it looks very good. Why? I really had to stop myself from just going, oh, I'm a crazy person? Hush, you.